Okay, Andrea.
Well,
Nice.
welcome everybody, and we're gonna have a fun webinar series over the next month. Just Monday night, 7 o'clock. We'll meet the next 3 Mondays, and whether you join us live or catch the replays, this would be a fun place. We all are part of Hatsu Chiropractic, as you probably know, and we would just want to make sure that we continue to educate the basics because those get missed all the time, and then help you locate your root cause of potential disease. So tonight's topic is hydration and food and why those are just the foundation of our health. And then we'll move from there in the next weeks. These webinars are going to be short and sweet, and we want them to be actionable and practical. And we'll have a Q&A at the end. So Andrea is going to start us off.
Yeah. Are you able to see the screen then
Yeah,
with the PowerPoint?
looks good.
Okay. All right. Well, we're gonna, dive right into the foundation. So water and food and why they're so important in it. So when we look at kind of why we want to start at these points, it's kind of the core of everything. So if our bodies are dehydrated, that's going to be affecting how our digestion is. That's going to be affecting our food cravings that we're having. So there's a lot of symptoms that are going to come from dehydration, and we want to make sure we're staying on top of that. So this gives you an idea, like if you're tired, bloated, constipating, craving sugars, craving different things, there's probably a reason to that. And a lot of times, instead of grabbing food throughout the day, like he said, 70 plus times a day, whatever your number was, instead of doing that, we can be looking towards maybe we're just dehydrated or maybe we're needing some minerals to fill that in. So the idea of like kind of reflecting on how much you're drinking per day gives you a good start because most of us think we're maybe doing okay, but we're really pretty much hitting the low end of what we should be doing for an adequate water intake. And then with our food, we want to make sure that all the food we're putting into our bodies are actually healing foods. Every food that we eat carries information to our body. So those are going to either be something that heals our body and reduces inflammation or something that adds to inflammation in our bodies. So we want to make sure that what we're putting in is good fuel for our body. And then Hippocrates has the let thy food be thy medicine, and then medicine be thy food. So having a good foundation at your food is really a key thing. So when you talk about water, you want to find water that's actually going to hydrate your body. So there's all kinds of water that you can get. Typically, you want to stay away from all tap water. But when we're looking at filters and what's the best way to remove chemicals from it, you're wanting to filter your water for sure, and that is removing the most majority of toxins. So some of the better ones would be like an AquaTrue filter. Those can be like countertop or built-in ones. The Berkey is a good option, and then you can go whole house systems that are going to filter all the water that you're encountering. And then distilling it is going to remove everything from the water. So with that, when that happens, it's removing all radiation that would be in it, but you have to remineralize your water. So just like any reverse osmosis waters, you have to put minerals back into it to make sure that your body's actually staying hydrated in that. Mineral water is going to help support your body's detox, energy, and hydration. Because if we're not mineralized, our body's going to just kind of flush through all the water we're drinking. So it's not going to hang on to it and absorb what it needs. That's one of the things we like to do is the Celtic sea salt is a good way to start adding minerals back in because that alone contains 72 minerals. So it's really rehydrating. The body likes that, the kidneys like it. It's a really big benefit to that. So one of the things that is a good way to start your day off is to do warm water. The body digests warm water better. And then with a little bit of lemon, that citrus helps set up the pH of the stomach. And then add some Celtic sea salt into that. So that's a great morning stack. Now, let's see. I think it's a big deal to get enough water in throughout your day because hydration is going to affect everything. And the amount of, there's supposed to be a little picture of a brain here, but the amount of water in our brain is about 85% or 75%. So we have to make sure we're getting adequate water because even if that decreases a little bit, we start to feel it in our cognitive reasoning and processing. So just even a small dehydration level can start showing up. So hydration effects you can read through here, but it's going to affect the cognition. It's going to start affecting lymphatic movement, so your body's ability to detox and move those through. It's going to start showing up in sluggish digestion. So that could look like constipation, slower bile production. So then your body's not breaking down the fats and everything you're needing, less energy. So you're going to notice more fatigue. It's going to take longer for your muscles to recover. And then it's just quicker aging, mood swings. You can be more irritable if you're dehydrated. And then it's going to affect sleep as well. So let's see. One of the big things here, so the brain, the circulatory system, lungs, skin, all those things are coming from hydration, from our water. And so we really need to make sure we're up on that. Every cell in your body needs water to function, and dehydration would be like running your engine without fuel. And we all know we're not going to do that. So we want to feed it well. Let me make sure, do you guys have anything to add on the water part?
Well, I think one thing we hear a lot of is that people are drinking a lot of water, but they still feel, well, dehydrated and tired and thirsty. So I think just like making food or making water food is such a important just a routine for us to get into. And like that video, that picture right there, just like so nourishing, just with
Yeah.
some mint and some lemon in it. But you just, if you can add things to your water to help your body hang on to it, then you're gonna not need as much water and you're gonna be happier enough
I
to.
think that's a good point. And water rehydration can look like a couple different things. So like making it into food, so adding in your citrus like lemon, oranges, cucumbers, putting in like what's the other, well, even just coconut, putting things in there that's going to help it, kind of infusing your water, making it a little more easier to drink. You can throw in any type of fruit. But then also like bone broth, coconut water, herbal teas, those are all going to be things that also are rehydrating to the body. And then there's certain fruits and vegetables that also rehydrate. So you're looking for things with a higher water content.
You could definitely go a whole an hour easy talking about water. Jordan knows a lot about all the filtration methods, and it's unfortunate that so much of our water has been toxic and radiated, and so there's different filters for that. And then we know it's become a little bit more known that the plastics that we drink out of are a problem. So if you can run your water through glass, stainless steel, but so many things have plastic in them, and of course, if that plastic in the bottle has been heated, they say that we take in a credit card size amount of plastic per week in our culture. And so we definitely don't want to do that. That's hormone disruptors, and that affects our body in a bad way. And hopefully, if you have good channels of detoxification, you can maybe get rid of some of that stuff. But one of the big things is not to be starting to cut down the amount of plastic that we take in. And it's crazy. Plastic is in about everything. Styrofoam cups and our coffee cups, oftentimes our cans are lined with plastic. So they made it pretty hard. You'll have to be really aware of ways to not take on toxic microplastics, but then also always be aware of your detox channels.
One of the other things to point out, because that's super important, and like the hydration is all about helping detox pathways. The kidneys are a huge part of that detox, and the kidneys filter about 50 gallons of fluid every day, and blood goes through the kidneys about 60 times a day. So the kidneys can't perform any of that to where it needs to be optimally without plenty of water. So we have to give our body what it needs to actually help the detox. And then as far as the digestion goes, when water starts like the digestive tract, it starts from our mouth. So chewing helps the food mix with the saliva, and the saliva is supposed to break down our foods and the carbohydrates, but that is mostly water. So in the saliva, you have to have enough hydration to actually get enough enzymes. So like the lipase helps with digestion, and if you're dehydrated, you're not going to have that proper saliva to start breaking it down. And that's also why it's important to chew your food enough times to make sure you're excreting that and it's starting to break it down. And then yeah, you want to make sure just to avoid any sluggish elimination. So that constipation we mentioned, you just need to have enough of the water. All right, I'm going to move on to food unless you guys have anything more there. So then the idea of food foundations and using our food to actually fuel our body and kind of lay down the roadmap, our blueprint for where our DNA, where our energy needs to be put. So food acts as a fuel and instructions to your cells. So you want to eat real food to support your body. And then, like we talked about earlier, like every bite you take, you're either feeding inflammation or you're healing it. So you want to be really careful and think about that as you're taking things on. So this is a quick breakdown to give you, not to overwhelm, but proteins. You've got 4 calories per gram of proteins in proteins. And then carbohydrates are about 4 calories per gram. When we talk about carbohydrates, you're thinking like complex carbs, which that's more like maybe your sweet potatoes, some of your vegetables versus the white bread, wheat bread, less of those, more of the complex carbohydrates. And then the fat is going to get you a long way because fat is equal to 9 calories per gram. So that's why the fat gives longer lasting fuel for the body and it's supporting the brain. So this is going to be where your body's going to start stabilizing in that blood sugar and it's going to start stabilizing hormones when you give it adequate amounts of healthy fat. And so I think I have it later on, but that healthy fat is going to look like avocados, avocado oil, coconut oil, ghee, grass-fed butter, different things that you can think of that are helping lower that inflammation instead of increase it. And then the ones that you want to avoid and stay away from, that's going to be like the safflower, the sunflower, vegetable oils, canola oil, and so on. That list can keep going, but you want to really focus on healthy fats. Those are going to fuel the body. Mm. All right, so then we have to talk about like what's actually in our foods, right? So every time a food is processed down or even has the genet that's been genetically modified, there's something in there that's not in its normal structure. So it's either placed in there to make it grow faster and grow bigger, but our bodies don't know how to break that down. And so we end up with this toxic overload, creating more inflammation. So you really want to be aware of anything processed has gone through some design to make it last. And it's going to usually have ingredients in it that make it addictive by design. And one of the things is what is the coffee creamers is a big one in that where they're very addictive because there's a load of sugar in there, a lot of preservatives, but they become just as addictive as cocaine. They start lighting up the brain in the same way that cocaine and drugs would start highlighting the brain. And so it's really difficult to get off of that. You'll see a lot of people who are addicted to their coffees, but really they're addicted to more what they're putting into it. It's hard to start getting that sugar out of it. Hidden sugars in foods, they're going to spike glucose. And I do have a slide, I believe, that goes over some of like the hidden names. So you'll want to, when we get to that, write some down or take a photo of it. So one of the things, if you're going to be out eating or you're grabbing stuff at the store, is you want to just ask yourself, is this actual, like, is this real food? Is this going to heal my body? Or is this manufactured and is it going to create more inflammation and kind of fuel the fire of what's already going on? So those are definitely big things you want to be aware of. Okay, so here's kind of an idea, and we've done full talks on this, but this gives you a quick overview of just like quick reading labels, what to look out for on that. So if you guys want to write this down or just take a screenshot of it, but sugar can go by like over 50 different names and they all disguise it, and some of them don't look so bad, and then some things don't even look like it's a sugar listed, but they're all sugar. So it's really important to know like how to read your labels. So when we talk about it, we want you to focus more on the ingredient list versus the nutritional facts that are there. So the ingredient list is going to tell you more of like everything that's in your stuff and more of what it's doing for your body. So the fewer ingredients, the better. The more you're able to pronounce them, that's great. Even that's the best if you're able to pronounce them. And then one thing to note is that ingredients are listed in the order of quantity. So if you first see that it says sugar and then cane syrup and then brown rice syrup, and then gets into what's in it, then you're really heavy on a sugar snack. If it starts listing off like sunflower seed oil and vegetable oil, canola, those things are going to be heavier, and you really want to avoid that because that's going to start adding to that inflammation that's built up in the body. And you don't really want to fall for anything like the labels on it. So when they say like, oh, it's all natural or it's keto, it's a ketogenic one, it's low fat, it's gluten free, you still want to read the label because a lot of times, even if they're saying low fat, it usually has a lot of the vegetable oils in it. And so you want to make sure that you're reading it, know what you're actually eating. Same with the gluten-free. A lot of gluten-free labeled foods, they're still processed and they're full of a lot of junk. Natural, that's going to be just kind of a claim that can be put on a lot of foods. So again, don't be brought into it just because of the label. Always flip it over, always look at the ingredients on that. And we can always dive into that more. We've done longer ones on this. Sneaky sugar names, anything that ends in ose. So like sucralose. What is the other one? There's a bunch of them. There's a whole list. Amylose, allose. Those things are all going to be sugars. So if you see anything ending in OSE, typically that's going to be a hidden sugar name. And then any type of preservative. So MSG is a neurotoxin. I don't think it's as commonly found in foods now as it used to be, or at least you just have to be aware of it if it is in there. Then we're going to see the carrageenan, which is a preservative as well. So that's going to be a gut irritant. TBHQ, I'm pretty sure that's found in oil, but it's also found in Cheerios. So something to be aware of in that. Then any type of food dyes. A lot of those are going to be neurotoxins as well. Do you guys have anything to add to that one?
Megan mentioned fillers in products on Amazon or not directly from the supplement location.
Yeah, that's a good point too, because like we're talking foods here, but then also you can look at your supplement labels and see that a lot of them will have these fillers and they'll have sunflower oil and they'll have different oils put into it. Glycerin's a big one. And so, yeah, even if you think it's a healthy product or it's a supplement and so it should be benefiting you, always, always, always flip it over and read on it. And then don't just buy anything you see on the internet because a lot of times the quality of those is just not where it should be. It's not been tested. And then some people will buy the products and they'll switch the labels. So you aren't always getting the full, like, true thing that you thought you bought. So always be careful with getting it from like on an Amazon or online somewhere. They're not what they're cracked up to be there. That's a
When
good
you
point.
when you start looking at labels, and like you said, Andrea, that some you can't even pronounce, they're chemicals and they're bad. They're bad for us.
Yeah.
You think, well, many of those things need to be detoxed, not digested. They're not food things that supply nutrition. And we're feeding our body, and we're actually, if you think about it, we're feeding cells. And when you get into like what you just said, no seed oils, because those harden and affect the cell membrane. So you're affecting basically your units of life. And it's amazing what this body can do with the trillions of cells that we have to sustain the onslaught of what we've given it by way of not good food. But we need to be wiser because we can see there's epidemics that are being formed because we're not feeding our bodies the fuel that they need. These marvelous bodies that do great things, they need high good quality food. And otherwise, they're trying to detoxify the effects of what we're eating. So
I think that's a good point. And just the idea of like the food that we're buying, the food that's in the stores right now, it's like it's not actually food. And so, yeah, just being aware of that. We're really like if you're having to detox more than you're digesting it, then it's not really a good thing for you. Yeah, so the smaller the ingredient list, the better. That's where it's going to be really easy if you do real foods. And then even in real foods, I didn't put the link on here, but it's easy enough to look up a dirty dozen and then the clean 15. So the dirty dozen would be ones that you would want to make sure you're buying organic and free of those things. Then the dirty dozen falls into that. Then the clean 15 are ones that maybe if you can't switch all your produce to all organic, then the clean 15 would be ones that would be okay to do GMO free or different to be okay to just get and still wash them, but they're going to be better to get the dirty dozen organic.
I think too is I hope that this whole Make America Healthy Again starts bringing some truth to the labeling because they've really made this very deceitful. And if you think that they don't even want to let you know when things are genetically modified as just one thing, but like so a lot of things fall under the category of natural flavors, and we know that they hide a lot of things under that aren't natural. And but this thing of intentionally being deceptive, if you think about that, when the tobacco companies hit a hard time and they were being brought down and advertising was being stopped on tobacco, the tobacco industries bought the food companies, Nabisco, and there's another one that's a big one. But anyways, they did the same things they did to tobacco. They hired chemists that showed what foods would light up your brain. And so it made it addictive. So it used to be an advertisement that said, you can't eat just one. They don't let you know that now, but that is so true. They've made it so that your brain lights up and craves and wants it. It's a comfort food. But it's like Andrew mentioned earlier, it's very much like drugs that are very addictive, how that lights up. And that's what they've done to make them sell more products, but not bring you good nutrition.
Well, and then as we look at, like, even when you talk about the natural flavors, anytime you see the label that says natural flavors, they can put anything into that. So usually it'll be towards the end of the ingredient list. So it's a little bit of a lot of things that are put into that. And we don't know. They don't have to disclose it. And so anytime there's a natural flavor listed, it's a red flag. Now, some companies will put natural flavors on, and they'll usually disclose what it is if it's really a clean ingredient. But a lot of times they're just going to list that versus listing natural flavors. So it's always something to look at. And even just reaching out to companies and saying, hey, like, what's actually in this? And if they are not willing to disclose it, most likely it's a whole lot of stuff we don't want to know. So when you've got that whole list of ones that you should avoid, things to look out for, what you want to focus on choosing is whole real foods, things that are easy to pronounce. You know what they're called, you know how to spell them. You want to focus on the healthy fats. So here's a list of ones we talked about earlier. And then as far as for sweeteners, any type of monk fruit and stevia, those things aren't going to create a big glycemic spike. So it's going to keep your blood sugar stable where it should be. And then raw honey, ideally it's local raw honey. That's also a good option if you need to add as a sweetener. And then anytime you can add and use like herbs and spices instead of things that have natural flavors in it, you're going to be able to get a good flavor still on what you're cooking, and it's going to be healthier for you. And our tongue has all the receptors to start recognizing sweet and salty, and there's the bitters, and then I think it's umami is another one. So we really need to be like, that helps create that saliva and that production, and then it helps our digestion as we start highlighting those flavors. And then any type of like meats, you want to focus on grass-fed meats, wild-caught fish. Those things are going to be really healthy for the body, and because it's a good amount of protein, it's going to stabilize you throughout the rest of the day. So protein first when you're eating. And then you want to think about fat. Fat is that 9 calories per gram. So fat is really good because it's slow to burn. And so if you start your day with that or you do that, it gets you to that level of satiety faster and you'll stay full for longer. So you can cut out some of the snacking in between. Let's see. So some of the things kind of we were talking about throughout this that you can easily integrate in would be to start your morning with minerals. So that filtered water, lemon, and then add some minerals back into it. Starting your day out with a protein-dense breakfast. And even if you are intermittent fasting, whenever you decide to break your fast, that is your first meal of the day. You want to make that a protein-heavy meal. So with that, you're aiming for about 20 to 30 grams of protein. It's going to be different for everyone. Everyone has different ranges, but really that should be like what your goal is per meal. And then cooking the greens, that's going to help the body absorb it a little better, making sure that you're getting that in when you cook them. It breaks down faster. And then just a bonus thing that you can do is just kind of going through and swapping out any inflammatory fats for the healthy fats. So you have some of the bad listed, we can always go back to them, and then you have the good ones. So just kind of what do you cook your meals in? What are you cooking? What are you throwing on the pan when you put oil in? Just making sure that you're going more of the healthier alternatives versus the inflammatory ones. And then one of the other ways that we can always like gives you an insight to kind of what you're tracking and how those foods are affecting you, and even like how protein in the morning, how that does for your blood sugar in your body, is to wear one of those continuous glucose monitors, because that gives you a 24/7 insight into how your body's regulating blood sugar. And so how you're breaking down and how you're using the proteins. Because not all foods are going to interact with me the same as they're going to interact with Dr. Jordan or Brenda or anyone. So you want to make sure that like what you're eating is going to benefit you and your metabolism and your body and build. And so the continuous glucose monitors give you a really big insight to that. Kind of saying like, hey, if I eat this protein, I'm pretty steady, but if I eat just a piece of toast and the avocado, I'm noticing I spike and then it drops and then I get really fatigued. So it kind of gives you an idea of like how that protein helps to stabilize things. Let's see. So I'm going to share a little bit more before we go on to that, but some of the things like some of the things we've gone over is like common things we see with people is they're drinking a lot of water and yet they're still constipated, or they're drinking a lot of water and these things are still showing where they're dehydrated and their body's needing more to help support them, and they say I'm already drinking 100 ounces or more. That's usually where we find that missing piece is the minerals. They're not remineralizing their water, or they're out all day long and they're not getting enough adequate, their body's not absorbing what they need. So that's a big factor. The other thing would be like if they feel like they're eating a clean diet, but they're still feeling bloated, that's typically that poor digestion. So making sure that they're getting the water in, right, to help with that bile and help break that down. And then some of the people like who like to do the intermittent fasting, and we're big fans of that too, but they're not eating enough real food. So when they do break their fast, they're breaking it with some stuff that's not supporting their bodies, right? And so we want to make sure that if you are going to intermittent fast, that first meal, especially breaking the fast, has to be really good fuel for your body. And then everything else from then on needs to be fueling your body if you're really shortening your eat time. But then with anything, like it's all about progress. So we're not looking for perfection in this. We're just looking for progress and then awareness of areas where maybe you can get better on, or areas where you feel like you've slacked a little bit, and what can you start doing to improve on that? So these are some good mini things you can do, start throughout your day. And then Jordan, I'm going to jump to the next one here.
Yeah, so this is like if you feel like what we talked about, like hit home, or if you're tired of trying to piece it together yourself and want some guidance in that, this is a fun idea for you, and an opportunity that we're creating. It's a 4-week group program, and it's the first month of our big signature program. But this way, it gets you quick wins, it gets you feeling better fast. And the idea is to make you go from whether you're burned out or bloated or trying to piece together all these complicated health issues. Like we said, a lot of times that gets missed in the basics. So that's why we just really want to hone in on those. So this would be a really fun time, uh, especially with the group aspect. There's been a lot of studies that have shown that when you go through a health journey as a group, a lot of things that you might not even expected to get out of a program will come into play, and good results come from that. So we want to keep spots limited, 10 spots, just to make it personable. Our health coach, Elizabeth, will be the leader of this. There will be weekly challenges that you personally get to work through, but then like everybody gets to go through it together as well, everybody in the group. And then you get really in-depth like recipes and an eating plan, along with a jumpstart supplement kit. So that's all going to be at the end of this webinar series. We'll start that in August. So we're excited for anybody who'd like to sign up and try that out. There's a code there to scan. There's a link down there to click on if you'd like to learn more about it. But that's what we're wrapping up with for today.
And this is all a foundation. So it's all like how we start building like a healthy and resilient body. We want to like make sure we have the foundation set, so then you can go from there and start doing more with that. Did you guys have any questions then that came up? It looks like somebody shared the Dirty Dozen, Clean 15, which is helpful.
I'd like to say that on our journeys together through this, what one of our goals is that people know their body. And if you start learning about what your body's saying when you have cravings, that can be really important. For instance, I mean, sometimes you're craving things because things aren't working right and you're not detoxing, and that's a real common thing we find, that when people when they're always hungry and they're not able to be satisfied. I mean, there's a lot to that issue, but a lot of times that's a liver gallbladder thing that needs to be addressed. And because when you're handling your fats well, you generally don't have all the cravings. And of course, there's the emotional eating that people have. Sweets are oftentimes a sign of a B deficiency. Sweet cravings and cravings for salts are a sign of adrenal tiredness. And chocolate is magnesium. But then there's these cravings that we have that are created by parasites. And sometimes the cravings that we have aren't ours. There's the things we're hosting. And that's a crazy thought, but it happens a lot, where sometimes a pathogen that's in your gut can make you crave things that aren't necessarily for your good, but it's for their good. And so it's a good thing to kind of know your body along the way. And when you go through life and you have this or that happen, it triggers like, okay, I know that. I know where that comes from. Even if it's emotional eating, okay, I know the things I need to do, so I'm not emotionally eating. I need to break that cycle. But it's an awareness of our bodies that we want to keep learning and teaching people to learn how to learn their own self, so they know what to do.
Cheyenne was asking, is maple syrup a good sweetener? And I would say it's probably a better alternative to some different sugars, but it's still going to spike the blood sugar. So in that sense, like maybe you'd be better with something more like it's still sugar, but it's not going to be maybe as processed as the granulated sometimes, which looks like you got it, Jordan. But then the monk fruit and the stevia, those two things aren't going to spike the blood sugar. So like that's where that continuous glucose monitor comes in, because everyone's going to react differently to that. But I think it's a good alternative, yeah. Any other questions with the hydration or anything else going on? Or the foods?
Other things that we see is when you try to eat less, like you're fasting or you're cutting calories, but you're still gaining weight or just hitting a plateau. And that's a good time to kind of take a step back and look at your blood sugar levels, like the order of your eating, how many meals you're eating. Maybe you don't need to intermittent fast. Maybe you actually need to eat more in the day to help your cortisol. So if you're burnt out, or if your adrenals are not doing you well, then they need food, and that will help balance cortisol, which will help your blood sugar. So that's an insight to look into. And really, if you eat good, clean food, it won't be about eating less calories. It'll just be about eating the good fuel until your body says, I'm full. The other thing was if you feel bloated all the time and you eat clean, but you're bloated, you feel inflamed, that's a sign that, one, your body isn't able to digest what you're putting into it, not breaking it down. But also, like, if you look at, like, why does it not have the strong enough stomach acid that it needs, and that's when you start to look at your environment, like chemicals, whether it's in your water, food, or air, mold or parasites. Like, that's when you start to get to the nitty-gritty stuff that can make big shifts if you are able to detox well.